Okay, pause and think about this question. Do you see your kids as parasites, or do you see them as like the flowers and the bees?
Let's keep calm and mother on. Mothering is way too important to do alone and way too serious to be serious all the time. My name is Christy Thomas, and I am here shoulder to shoulder with you, mothering and enjoying life together. This is the podcast where you can focus on being mindful and taking a deep breath with me and learning new things so you can pause and savor the amazing life you already have.
Today's guest is Dr. Morgan Cutlip. She has a PhD in psychology, and she's a highly sought after relationship expert. What I love about her is that she knows what it's like to lose yourself in motherhood, and she's determined to make it better for those coming behind her. When I found her book, Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself, and then got to read an advanced copy and see all the notes in the back, I was so excited that someone with a PhD was able to talk about this and give so many references and make it feel credible for people who feel alone, but also feel like, am I making this up? And you're not. Okay? You don't have to lose yourself to motherhood. Throughout her career, she has helped hundreds of thousands of people worldwide learn how to form and maintain healthy relationships, including the relationship with yourself. Dr. Morgan has recently been on Good Morning America. She's been on Teen Vogue, the New York Times, Women's Health, MOPS, all sorts of things. I can't wait for you to listen and feel inspired and know that you have to have her book. It comes out on September 19th. Today, we get to have an amazing conversation with Dr. Morgan Cutlip. Welcome, Morgan.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I am so excited. Your book comes out really soon, or maybe it's already out by the time people listen to this. It's called Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself. That's right. Yes. Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself. And that is a huge, I wonder if it's going to stop people in their tracks when they read your title.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it gets right to the core of what us moms really desire, which is that we want to be the best moms possible. We want to, especially the millennial generation and younger generations, we're so invested in being good parents. But at the same time, moms specifically are really struggling in motherhood. So we want to be good parents, but also we kind of want to feel good in motherhood.
We do. We want to go to bed feeling like we were a good mom.
Yes. You're not going to lay in bed and replay the day's events and beat yourself up over them. So I hope it stops people in their tracks because, it's hitting to a core, just desire that we hold in our hearts.
Absolutely. So, and you talk about that there are three main things that trip up a mom in terms of not allowing herself to love her own life. So what are the hurdles that moms face?
Yeah. So I start, so it's chapter 1. I lay out 3 core conflicts that moms face that make motherhood feel really hard. And the reason why I do this is because I'm a really big believer in, defining invisible experiences that feel challenging. I feel like when we put words and definition to tough experiences, it empowers us to do something about it. And I think a lot of times in motherhood, we're contending with this stuff that feels really hard, but we have no language for it, no definition around it. So we're just like, it's hard. We're not really, I was like, what do you do about it? So, I outlined 3 conflicts. They all begin with I, so hopefully they're memorable. And the first is identity, and the conflict is my needs versus the needs of everyone and everything else. And I think this is really, a thread that runs throughout the book.
Yeah.
Which is that, as women in general and moms specifically, we are sort of raised up with this belief, whether it's from our own upbringing, society structures, that we need to self-sacrifice for the preservation of our relationships. And, the thing is early in motherhood, we do need to.
Right.
We really do. We got to keep babies alive.
100% dependent, right? There is a time where you have to.
Where it's required. And I think it's a beautiful thing and a quality that I think women have is that how we really are the nurturers and the glue in our relationship. So early on, we've got to do it. We got to keep these humans alive. But when we stay in that place of suppressing our needs for the sake of our relationships too long, I'm talking like 4 years, 5 years, we sort of, get into toddlerhood and a little bit beyond, and we're like, whoa, I don't even know what I need anymore. Yeah. I know I feel yucky. I don't know what moves the needle. Yeah. And I talk to moms all the time who are in this place. So that's the first one. The second one is idealization. So this is what I imagine motherhood would be like versus what my reality is.
That's a really big one.
It's huge and it covers a lot of different areas, but I think one in particular that's really important is thinking about the mom you thought you would be, or now it becomes the mom I should be. And a lot of us don't unpack that statement, but I like to explain it as, from the moment we're born, we're learning how to be moms. We are learning from how we were mothered or cared for, depending on who our caregivers were. We're learning from, what we consume, the structures that we exist in society. We're learning what it means to be a mother. And it just lives in us. Like it's in our soul, in our body, but we don't really know it exists until we become moms, and it manifests itself in the form of expectations that we hold ourselves to. And so all of a sudden it's like, why do I feel like I'm constantly falling short? Why do I feel guilty for this? Why do I feel like I should be doing this and I'm not doing this? And we feel kind of crappy.
Yeah,
a lot of times
a lot
in motherhood.
of to-do lists that I don't even know where they came from.
Yes, these standards that become really unrealistic. And so I like to say that when our expectations or our ideals are really far from our reality, that gap between is where guilt and shame and feelings of falling short creep in. And so that's the second conflict that a lot of us are contending with in motherhood.
Yeah.
And then the third is intensity. So it's what do I say? Identity, ideals, intensity. And that's, it's important to be the perfect parent versus my parenting is good enough. And, I think we could talk for endless amount of time on this one, but, the thing is that we're parenting now with such intensity. We are really almost like this heightened awareness of the fragility of our children. We all sort of, I'm generalizing big time here, but I think a lot of people will relate with this worry that that one misstep will forever mess up our children.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's those jokes online, right? Like, don't save for college, save for the therapy fund.
Yes. Yeah. We're all, because, millennial generation, when you look at the research, we spend the most amount of money on, self-help and self-improvement. Yeah. We're super invested. And I think it's a great thing. Yeah. But, it's gone really far with our kids. And I think it's created this almost hypervigilance in our parenting experience where we're sort of tense. We're walking on eggshells. We're really trying to get it perfect. Yeah. And, that's also unrealistic and also sets us up to experience a lot more struggle and burnout in the parenting process.
Yeah, because when you're trying for perfect, you don't get to model how to make mistakes either. Like our kids miss out so much on if we set the bar so high. And I say this speaking as I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I'm realizing how much they've absorbed, right? And I was like, oh, I need to make more mistakes in front of you. So when your mistakes come up, you know a different way to respond.
Totally. I mean, I've heard from some people before where they've said my felt like my mom was perfect or my parents were perfect and now I'm a perfect. Like, oh, I can't get it right, too good, and now you set them up with these high expectations. Right. But I think you're right. Like we really, it's important for us to model how to repair with our kids, how to recover from a mistake, how to carry yourself when you make a mistake and to, move through that process, too, which becomes really powerful. And I like to say to parents, we can have the best of intentions going into parenthood, but we cannot control the interpretation of what we do by our children.
This is so powerful.
There's a difference there between intent and interpretation. And so, I know I interpreted things from my childhood that was not the intention of my parents. And so I've had to work through that, right? And restructure it or change it or talk to them about it. And so all of our kids are going to leave childhood with some interpretation that doesn't get our attention.
And that's just the human experience, right?
Right.
Like that is way normal compared to like no one can have that perfect experience.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. So how did we become such hyper focused on parenting? Like I kind of wish that we were in the Jell-O salad days again of like martinis at the door.
Jell-O salad. You just brought back all these memories for me.
Like growing up in the Midwest, you were judged on your Jell-O salad.
It's true. Wasn't there something like ambrosia that had marshmallows in it or something like
good
that?
Midwest salad does not involve any vegetables.
I'm from the Midwest, so I know. I'm not sure exactly how we got here. I have suspicions. I think that part of it could be our generation coming out of divorce culture, which I think really shifted the way that we approach parenting. When we look at the research on millennial parents, it's almost as if parenting has moved central, and even things like partnering and our partner relationships have sort of moved to the back burner. And we're so like, we had this pain, we had this struggle, of watching our own parents go through divorce or go through heartache, that we want to really do things differently with our children. It's not necessarily translating as much to our partnerships, in my opinion, but really with our children. And so, when you look at the research even on it, it almost suggests that we almost like define ourselves through our kids, which can become a little bit of a dangerous place.
That's a tricky spot.
It's a tricky spot. So I think part of it is coming from the divorce culture and just having this heightened awareness of really wanting to do things differently. I think too, the social media, I know it's the cliche,
but it's truthful.
But it's just truthful, which is that, and it's on multiple levels. I think one level is this comparison piece, which is there's always somebody who's, has it more together, has more money, is more beautiful, has seemingly better behaved children, has a prettier house. Like there's endless content to compare yourself to feel like you're just not getting it right. Yeah. And then I think there's this other thing which has been newer, which is this uprise in the Instagram and social media experts. And I realize I fall into that camp.
I mean, I think having a podcast kind of puts me in that spot for some people too, even though that was accidental, right? Like,
absolutely. But we're all pumping out information, which can be like this information overload. And so I think that parents are really wanting to get it right. So they seek out this information and a lot of the information starts to contradict. It starts to get overwhelming. And
I think confusing.
It's confusing, and it's presented sometimes without factoring, all the time really, without factoring your personal life context.
Right.
And so it can, like I think about our daughter. So our daughter is 10. That's my oldest. Okay. Her name's Effie. And when she was born, I wasn't on social media, but I read a lot of blogs. And then eventually, I moved to books.
Yeah.
And then eventually social media rolled around when she was a bit older. But she started tantrums, really intense tantrums when she was around probably 14, 15 months. And this was I was like, who is this child? I did not expect this. And all the information I was consuming at the time, and I did podcasts, was a lot of name it to tame it.
Yep.
With Effie, if you named it, I would say you named it and you inflamed it, but she just got more intense.
Yeah.
She would come at me. It would aggravate her and irritate her. And so it left me feeling like something's either wrong with me or something's wrong with my child or something's wrong with both of us.
And had you studied psychology at that point? Like, let's hear your background.
That's the crazy part. I have my doctorate in psychology. I have a master's in human development and family science, but they don't teach you how to handle a tantrum.
This is so good to hear. Yeah.
No, there's no class on that. And so, a lot of the people out there who are sharing information, they didn't necessarily, maybe some of them have taken trainings and things since, but like, getting your doctorate in psychology, there's not a parenting 101 class here.
Yeah.
So we're all figuring it out too. And I think that my experience is a pretty normal experience, which is moms and parents are left wondering, oh, there's all this stuff. I'm not quite doing it right. What's wrong with us? And I think too, I saw all the back to school stuff. There was one post that talked about doing these affirmations with your kids every morning. I was like, I'm just trying to get out the door on time. I can do it. So I think there's also all these suggestions that are beautiful, but can leave you feeling like, you're not doing enough.
Well, as we talked in the pre-interview here, right? Like, my husband's active duty military. I've parented most of the time with him underwater without being able to communicate. And so my capacity to do some of these things, right? Like, I have to know what I can actually handle. And so please, when you're looking online, just know what's true for you. This is a really important part of your book.
Yes. Yeah, you have to know yourself really well. That's one of the steps in my book, is know deeply. And part of the reason you need to know yourself deeply is because then you can care for yourself in ways that actually matter. We're not all the same. There's individual differences. Our capacity, like you said, is different from person to person. And so I realize it's almost a common sense statement, know yourself well. But I think that we often don't know ourselves very well, and we lose touch really easily with ourselves in motherhood.
I think it's common sense because it feels like it should be easy to know yourself. Like, it feels simple to say, but it's really hard to do.
It is. And I think even in these surface exchanges, this becomes really apparent. Like, have you ever had that experience where somebody's like, oh, hey, how are you? And you're like, I'm good. And they're like, no. How are you? And I think a lot of us are like, I don't know. I don't know how I am. I haven't really tuned into myself in the last 5 years. We have such momentum that we move through life with that we often sort of leave ourselves in the dust.
Well, yeah. And just early on in motherhood, I remember leaving like my physical needs in the dust too.
Oh, yeah.
Like my kids could eat, but would I remember to eat, or remembering to go to the bathroom? Like, potty training someone made you super aware of how other people have to go to the bathroom.
I've held my pee for ridiculous amounts of time in early motherhood. Feels like you don't have time.
Well, yeah, or you had the experience like I did, maybe, where you finally went to the bathroom and that's when the Sharpie broke out, or like scissors.
Totally.
You're like, why?
I think we're really good at suppressing our physical needs on different dimensions. I mean, I think back to my early motherhood, and I just existed with chronic back pain, and didn't do anything about it. And I think a lot of us live with these aches and pains, and we chalk them up to normal experiences in motherhood. Oh, from carrying the baby. Yeah. Oh, just getting older, or carrying the extra weight around my tummy. Like, all of these things. Turns out I have like all these gut issues that just were getting worse and worse over the years that were making my back hurt. And so, as moms, we need to get really good at tuning in and listening to our bodies, because they're talking to us regularly. They're speaking to us. Our bodies are well-intentioned. They're constantly trying to regulate, to make things, keep things in place, hold us together, move us towards better health. And we often are working against them, but it's important for us to really to pay attention to that stuff too. And there is no way a mom would be approached by their son or daughter and, told that they have a stomach ache, and us be like, we'll get to you in 2 years. Like, we just wouldn't do that.
Not at all. Not at all. Right. So that's like the big premise of your book, is that motherhood doesn't have to rob you. That motherhood can be something that's expansive. It doesn't have to be parasitic. It's actually not supposed to be. Like, it's a beautiful relationship between you and a child, and it benefits both of you if you can let yourself show up for it.
Yes. Yeah. I have a whole chapter that tries to sort of provide a case for care, because I think as moms, it's a really hard selling point to tell us that we need to care for ourselves. We're sick of hearing that. We feel like it's not going to move the needle. It's not going to make a difference. And so I do this whole outline of why it's important. And one of the points is what you're saying, is that our relationship with our kids is mutually beneficial. There is, scientific evidence in terms of our physical health that supports this, and how fetal cells, this is not my research, so I'm speaking broadly, but how fetal cells actually live within our bodies and repair tissues. And there's research where the fetal cells have repaired heart damage spontaneously, which is crazy, because we think of our kids sort of as parasites, which is a terrible label for our
we do, especially during pregnancy, right?
Yeah, and breastfeeding.
Oh gosh,
if you choose to. Yeah. And so I think it's a mindset shift that's really important for a couple of reasons. I think it helps us just have a better attitude about motherhood. I think all of us can think of at least one occasion, and probably many more, where a child has triggered something in us that is actually shedding light on something that we need to change, and we need to work on, and we need to grow. And I think that's one sort of defining characteristic of a healthy relationship, is that it provides a safe structure for both people to become better than they would be on their own. And so I think it's really important that we expand our understanding of what motherhood is actually like and how we benefit too. It doesn't just take more than it gives. We get something too. And I think the other piece is that we have to understand that is because if we're all weary and withered away, then we actually aren't going to grow like we're supposed to in motherhood, and we're not going to be able to foster the same growth in our children, because we're not standing strong and resilient.
Yeah, and you talked about, this was one of my favorite parts in your book, is the mother trees, and how this isn't just something that's like a human thing. Like, there's nature and science that lets us know that we're supposed to take care of each other well.
That was one of my favorite parts to write. So my husband is not gone as much as yours, but he travels just about every single week. And so,
it adds up.
I know it adds up. And I'm a kind of a loner. So in some ways it's like kind of okay. Yeah. But, so I do watch a lot of TV by myself. And so this part is, I watched this documentary, I think it's called Intelligent Trees. But it talks about how there's this whole network under, like in the woods, there's this whole network where all of these trees are communicating through their root systems and some other systems,
That's
which
amazing.
I can never pronounce the word properly.
Yeah.
I'm not
like some sort of fungus, right?
It's a type of fungus. Yeah, they call it the wood wide web, which I think is hilarious.
It's hilarious.
And basically, what they do is when a tree is struggling, they can communicate with one another, and they can send nutrients to that tree to help it survive. And so this is how, forests really survive and how they flourish. But the cool part about this documentary is that the strongest, oldest, sturdiest, most resilient trees are called mother trees. And these are the ones that are really the most important for the health of the forest and that whole network, is that they are feeding these other trees. And if anything happens to a mother tree in the forest, it disrupts the entire system. Yeah. And I think it's just so similar to what it's like for us as moms, in that we, and unfortunately so many of us are not strong and resilient right now. Yeah. We're weak and weary and exhausted and hungry probably. And so
I mean, so many of us self-report burnout and we're striving for these really unrealistic things.
Yes. And we're missing it, because when we are not cared for, we are not able to show up in our relationships that are most important to us in the ways that we really want to. So it becomes counterproductive.
So part of your book talks about this really cool relationship attachment model that your dad made. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really neat.
Thanks. He developed this model in the late 80s, early 90s. And since I always feel like I have to say this so people aren't like, okay, you're just, you and your dad chatting, sitting around, writing stuff on napkins. But, it's been researched since by different universities and in textbooks, and it's the foundation of all of our relationship education courses. And basically what it is it's a model of relationships, and it works for any relationship partner, child, parent, friendship, coworker relationship.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why it's really helpful is one of the premises of my book is that you have to mother yourself like you mother your kids. I also say go mom yourself.
Yes.
And basically it means you have to manage your relationship with yourself. And I think that sounds good in theory. But it's like, what the heck does that even mean? What manage your relationship?
Well,
what is
because
that?
early on in motherhood, right? Like I'm so attuned to my kids' needs for so long that
Mm-hmm.
like I don't even know what my favorite things are anymore, right? Like how many
Totally.
times have you gotten into the car and like the kids' CD is playing and you're like, oh, I guess I should turn on the radio and hear what the new music is.
Yeah. What do I even like?
Yeah.
Yeah. I it's such a relatable experience. And I think what I want moms to know is that in this book, when I say manage your relationship with yourself, the relationship attachment model is the relationship that you're managing.
Yeah.
So it really takes something that's sort of airy-fairy and it makes it really practical and realistic. So it's like, here's a picture of a relationship.
Exactly.
There's 5 connections that make up a relationship. These are the things that you kind of do your self check-in or self-assessment through these 5 areas and make adjustments. So the core of the book walks moms through those 5 areas.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important areas that I loved in the book is the, can I rely on myself and can I rely on others? Like, am I making myself a commitment to follow through?
Yeah. So that's the chapter on, commit. So that chapter is called Commit Wisely. So there's 5 steps and, it covers a lot. And that commitment has different qualities. And one of them is, promise. And if you think about your romantic relationship, if you're married, you've made your commitment is a promise that you make, but we make promises to ourselves. Another factor of commitment is actually it's our willpower. It's our like persevering spirit, how we push through even when we don't want to. Also, you can see that in your romantic relationships. So there's all sorts of overlap here. But, when we regularly break promises to ourselves, it actually wears down our willpower because it disrupts our self-concept. If you think, I have this promise, I'm going to follow through, you break the promise and you're like, oh, of course, I can't stick with anything. And then it starts to erode your self-concept, which affects your willpower. And your willpower is that, you talked about it early on, that capacity, that energy that we take into every day, and moms need as much energy as possible. And so the 5 areas of a relationship, as you work through them, they start to sort of, all integrate and overlap and work together. So you kind of see how everything starts to connect.
I love it. So is there anything else that you want a mom to know before she picks up your book?
I want her to know that it's easy to do. I think, one of the biggest hangups for moms is, probably 2 things. One, is it really going to make a difference? And 2, I don't really have any time.
Right.
So
like if I'm already burnt out and burning the candle. And,
I'm at capacity. Now you want me to do another thing? And I want moms to know that, it's easy to do. The self check-in, that is the main takeaway of the book, you can do in the amount of time it takes for you to slice a peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, totally.
It's so fast. You can go pee 2 birds, 1 stone and do your self check-in. And so
in fact, I was thinking of hanging up the graphic of that audio slider in my bathroom so my kids could see it, right? Because this is something that needs to be talked about sooner.
Absolutely. And you can think about this slider, and I hope moms start to, like, as they digest the material in the book, will start to kind of use it, the RAM, to apply to their other relationships. But start thinking about it and how you connect to each one of your children. Yeah. How in the know are we? How am I doing in my opinion of them? How are we meeting each other's needs? All of these things. And it will help you manage that relationship. But I think the other thing I want moms to know is that it's practical. So I will take you through deep dive on each of those areas so we can get an actual rich understanding of what's going on here and what it means. But then I always bring them out and give practical, tangible solutions. And so it's quick and easy. It's practical, and it will make shifts. And I think there are shifts you can make. I know there are shifts you can make that don't require anybody else. You can do it on your own as you're making lunch or you're getting dressed for the day. You can make some of these shifts that will start to really have a major impact in your life. So.
I think so too. And I've read the book, and then I've listened to the audio sample you have for the pre-order. And so both are like really easy to digest too.
Yeah. I'm hoping it's a fun read.
Yeah.
tell a lot of stories.
You do. Like, there are stories in there. I'm like, oh yeah, that's relatable. Like, she has her PhD in this, but she's also had the toddler meltdown trying to buckle kids into the car.
Oh gosh, so many. I know I've tried to think about a content piece around this, but it's like skills I wish I had going into motherhood. And the one I wish I had was to be an alligator wrestler.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
That's what it felt like to try to get Effie in her car seat.
Yeah, it's awful. Sometimes it's
so
just
terrible.
Awful. Like, it's the best of life and the worst of life in the same exact moment.
It's so true.
Well, I know your book really focuses on unpacking self-care and getting away from like the surface level of self-care of just going to the gym and getting your hair and nails done. But how are you actually taking care of yourself in this moment while you're juggling a book launch and homeschooling some kids and living a busy family life? I'm pushing it really hard right now. So I think that I went into this with a mindset of I'm going to burn out. And I think that this is also a principle that I talk about in my book, which is that there are certain seasons or circumstances in life that are going to just throw you out of whack. Yeah. So try to normalize the experience of you're going to get out of balance. You're going to lose yourself sometimes. You're going to burn out sometimes, but how do you get back? So I'm going into my burnout with my eyes wide open. I'm like, I'm going to crash and burn. And I know what I need to do when I'm there to recover. And I think another thing through the process is I call it almost like microdosing my care, which is what I don't use that word in the book, but that's really a lot of what talked about too, is making these small adjustments. And so I carve out little pockets of time to do things that I know actually move the needle for me, because I know myself well. And so whether that's, sometimes it's just cranking on some music and kind of listening or dancing. Sometimes it's putting it all away and just soaking in my kids. Sometimes it's, having a good cry. Honestly. I mean, that's so realistic.
Just microdosing. And I think one of the hardest, and I talk about this in chapter 5, has been, my self-concept through this. It's a vulnerable process launching a book. And so regularly adjusting the way I'm thinking about myself, I think it's been one of the most powerful things I've done through this process.
Yeah, because your success isn't dependent on your kid's success. You're already amazing as a human. It's just lucky you get to be a mom.
So true.
Well, how are you having fun as a family?
We have put a pool in. That was like a big gift that we did for our family. And so, we have spent a lot of time swimming, this summer, which has been such a blessing and so much fun and nice to not have to go anywhere to wear the kids out. So I've been really grateful for that. I don't know, we're always having fun. We've been playing a lot of baseball. We do family baseball games every Sunday. Went to the movies recently. So just togetherness. Oh, so have you heard of Mr. Bean?
Maybe? Is that the old British guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're like the old British guy? Yeah, I know. You didn't expect this answer. So my husband and I met in high school. We didn't date that whole time, but we met in high school and dated for 3 years or so. And, we were super into Mr. Bean, who is, if you don't know who he is, he's like a British comedian who doesn't even speak and he does these bits. And it was a huge part of our relationship. And our kids are old enough.
It's totally a throwback thing.
It's hilarious. And it's clean and it's, it's innocent and it's so funny and so like not that overstimulating, which is really cool. But we have been on this kick where we have been watching Bean as a family and it has just been such a riot. So I highly recommend.
Oh, I'm totally putting that in my back pocket.
So fun.
Oh, thank you for reminding me of Mr. Bean.
You're welcome. That's probably what people remember most about this discussion. Oh, Mr. Bean.
Well, thank you so much, Morgan. I'm so glad and thankful that you are here on Earth at the same time. Like, it's so mathematically mind-blowing to me that we get to have this conversation. And you have always been exactly the right mom for your kids.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's such a cool way to think about it. And I really appreciate you having me here today.
I hope that filled up your cup so that it's filled to overflow so you can just love everyone in your life as much as you love yourself, because you are wonderful. I am so glad you are here on Earth. You are amazing just the way you are. I like you just the way you are. I hope you feel that, and I hope that it carries over into everything you do and to everyone you love. Have a great day.